Do you want to know what a professional painter and decorator, master craftsman, has in a decorative paint finishing box? Marbling, graining, all the bits and pieces for all the specialist tools to do those decorative treatments. Do you want to know more about it? Keep watching this video. We'll have the intro, we'll open up, we'll have a look what I've got. Welcome, fellow painters and decorators of the interweb. This is Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator, coming to you with a riveting, we love riveting, we love all riveting videos that I can do, don't we? Now, bit of a serious one. We had a marbling job the other week, previous video, that corner there, marbling a bath. Go back early 90s, Phil Beckwith, just starting out as an apprentice with my father, established in 1965, Doug Beckwith, been around a long while, knows a few things, one or two things, quite a lot of stuff. I come out of school, start doing me painting and decorating training, City and Guilds, Baystor College in Nottingham, alongside doing a day release painting and decorating course. Day release, you have one day at college, the rest of the week you're on site training. Used to do day release, or people used to be on block release. If you were I'll get my words out, if you were with big contract firms, you'd probably be on a block release. Now block release, you'd probably be there at college 6, 7, 8 weeks at a time, and then you go out on site working with your firm to do your apprenticeship. But what I did day release, so I was one day a week, and then the rest of the week was on site, practical, working on proper jobs. But as well as being at college for doing the City and Guilds, I also enrolled on the decorative paint finishers course, which was a non-vocational college class that was on a Wednesday evening at Baystor College. Now this, what I'm going to talk about, this is your specialist. You know, when you go next level, there's painters, there's decorators, and there's the next level of decorator that can do the specialist treatments. The specialist treatments being with paint, you're obviously doing it with paint and all those sorts of mediums, materials. Graining, making stuff look like wood. Marbling, making stuff look like marble. And then your decorative finishes that you probably have heard of over the years, rag rolling, dragging, sponging, stippling, even down to gold leaf, applying gold leaf. So that was a college course that was separate to the painting and decorating side of doing your qualifications. But what's interesting is, because City and Guilds, when I was doing City and Guilds, it wasn't, you didn't actually get a qualification in City and Guilds until you'd done your third year. Now once you'd done your third year, that was classed as a craft certificate. That was City and Guilds craft certificate. Now a lot of the students that I was at college with, I'm not saying fell by the wayside, but they didn't feel they needed to carry on any further other than craft certificate. So your first year was just a level 1, a level 2, and then the third year actually gave you a City and Guilds qualification. There's no other qualifications you can get with City and Guilds unless you've done the full process. So the third year was your craft certificate, and that was a proper City and Guilds certificate. Now I went on and carried on to do the advanced craft City and Guilds, which was an extra year, which made it, in effect, with it being day release, over 4 years. Now in that final year, that fourth year, we touched more on the decorative finishes, doing your graining, your marbling and your specialist treatments, and that's where you did your spraying as well. Anybody who knows about spraying, or if you don't know about spraying, on your City and Guilds, the proper City and Guilds courses, your fourth year would be touching on spraying. Now, as everybody knows, you don't learn everything at college all at once. It gives you the basics for you to then go out and expand your knowledge. So you get the basics, you get the health and safety side of things. Talk about that. God, you know what college is. You learn, and then you learn in the real world. So yeah, in the 4th year for my advanced craft, we touched more on the decorative finishes. We might have done a little bit in the craft certificate in the year 3, but when it came to actually the advanced craft, that's when you started doing a little bit more of the nicer stuff to the decorating side of the work. But what I'm getting back down to, by the time I'd got to the 4th year of doing that, I'd already had really 4 years doing an evening class with the same sort of treatments. And if I say same sorts, probably expanded more on it. You were doing tortoise shelling, you were doing malachite, all different paint effects to make things look something else. And malachite's as granity stone, you know what tortoise shell looks like. It looks like a tortoise shell. And I'd already done a good 3 to 4 years of that before we went on to do it at main City and Guilds level. But I have got a box that my mum's cousin made me back in the early 90s to house all the tools that I'd been given over the years for doing this sort of work, decorative treatments. Now, some of these tools in here are my father's. Some of them were given to him by his senior college lecturer when he was in at college back in the late 50s, early 60s. Now, my father went to well, it was the the Art College in Nottingham, which was on Peel Street. They did the City and Guilds back then, and again, late 50s, early 60s. That's still a college now, but it's more tied in with the Nottingham University or Nottingham Trent University. Everything's moved on. I mean, that's more university buildings now than it was as a City and Guilds art college as it was then. Hence why when I went to college it was Bayswater College. It's all moved on. Everything's moved on. It's not City and Guilds anymore. It's City and Guilds with MVQs and stuff. But okay, let's get back to what's in the box. So let's have a breather. I'm going to put my hand over. I'm going to have a quick drink because we're going to do a bit of talking. So hand over the lens. Do you know what? Hand over the lens probably means that Google Ads will stick an advert in, but please tell me there's a decent advert for you, because I've watched one of my videos back, and when an advert was put in, it was about Barbies and dolls. So I don't know what the algorithms are for picking up on that. They're obviously seeing what my kids are watching on the internet and YouTube, and allocating me Barbie adverts. Dolls. Right, so here's this box that my mum's cousin made me. Lovely. He was a cabinet maker, so this has stood the test of time. Now, I marbled, this was all in a hardwood. I marbled it. I did the priming, the undercoating, filling, and I hand marbled that in oil-based scumballs and glazes and paints 30 odd years ago. Then I'll say back in the day when you used to have your van sign written, Johnny Barker was the top sign writer in Nottingham. He hand sign wrote my name on the front, Philip H. Beckwith. That's me. So I've got a lovely box, and I'm going to open it up and show you what's in it. I can be quite quick with this, can't I? Can we do this under an hour? We can do this under an hour. Right, what have I got? You know, it's not smelly vision, but you know, every time I open this, I've got that smell, that nostalgic, oily smell of scumballs that, if you shut your eyes, you could bring a tear to your eyes to think back at the times when I was at college with oil-based paints and oil-based scumballs, and it's quite moving. Anyway, we're not going to get into tears, but you know what I mean. In here, I've got some of my, I did mention this when I did the marbling video that I've got a box. I've got some paperwork that my college lecturers gave me at the time to tell you how to do the basic principles of some of the marbles. So you'd have a bit of a picture of the grains, telling you what the marbles are. I've got a few of those. It's your college notes. smell of oil-based paint and scumbles. It's all your college-based stuff. So to tell you the colours that you'd need for a certain marble. Now the marble I did on the video, which you saw the link to, for a bath, that was a fantasy marble. And when I say fantasy marble, it was literally randomly made up. It gave you the style of a marble effect and pattern using colours that I wanted. It wasn't trying to match in with anything. Now I've got paperwork here that tells you of certain different marbles. For example, a sienna marble, more yellows, ochres, and it would give you, I don't know whether I've got one here with sienna marble, but it'd give you the style and pattern of what a sienna marble would look like, and that's what you'd have to replicate at college, and that's what you learnt. But when you got out into the real world, sometimes you didn't need to be doing an exact match of marbling. Does that make sense? So hence why I can do fancy marbles as well as doing replicating. If you're replicating a real marble, anybody who's watching this who is a decorative paint finisher, a specialist master painter that does this sort of thing, will probably give some comments and say how much more difficult it is. Well, not so much more difficult, how much more time's needed when you want to be doing replication of marbles and graining and bits and pieces like that. But comes with skill, it comes with the skill and comes with the time of learning your trade, and that's why everybody can paint. Well, if everybody can paint, why is the apprenticeships? Let's have a think about that one. Right, so in this box I've got some papers. I've got my paperwork from college, so 30 years ago. I've got little booklets that have got telling you about how to be doing the graining, different graining, this is different graining styles. Remember my door video? My door video. I've got here, I don't know if you can see, the process of where you start doing a door with graining, which is probably slightly different to painting it ordinarily. But I've got all the information there, so if I do forget it, and can Phil Beckwith ever forget anything? Knows everything. I have got some notes to fall back on if I just needed a refresher. So enough about me notes and my papers. What have I got in here? What's one of these? Artist easel. Put my colours, paints, I can work off that. I've even got with me, I'll call it a mole stick, but it's called a mole stick, isn't it, with a leather end. So when I'm doing anything decorative treatmenty, I could position that, oh I've got it wrong way around, position that in my hand, holding the mole stick like that, rest against the surface, and with one hand and the sign writing brushes or feathers, I could dip dab my paint onto a feather or a brush and work, and that'd be a guider. So I could do veining, graining, bits and pieces like that, all off something that's supporting me. So mole stick, artist easel, let's do that. Right, never did sign writing at college, because sign writing for me was falling by the wayside, because you got all the vinyl cut lettering machines coming through. So I never did sign writing, and also being terrible at spelling, won't be very good doing sign writing, would I? But no, always good in your arsenal, say in your arsenal, to have sign writing brushes, because these brushes are some of the things that you use in graining, marbling, decorative finishes. You'll probably find a proper nice real bristle brush will be sable, you might have squirrel, some of the bigger stuff, horsehair, bits and pieces like that. There's various different sorts of bristle of different animals depending on what sort of effect you want from a brush. Prices can vary depending on what animal it comes from. It's probably not politically correct now, but so sign writing brush, you've got sign writing brush, you know what they're for. Right, got a stippler. Now I should think, oh, smells, oh, it's just history. Stippler, you're going to say, what's a stippler for? Well, this is to stipple out paint surfaces to get them level, whether you're doing trying to go you know, graded colours, so darker at the bottom, stippling it out and fading, use that. But another thing I can remember, I've done it a couple of times back in the day when you had oil eggshell. Now oil eggshell paint is self undercoating. You used to sand down your surface, then you used to give it a coat of oil undercoat, oil eggshell. You didn't need to undercoat it. It's self-undercoating. You used to give it a first coat of oil eggshell and a second coat of oil eggshell, and that's all you needed. That's why it's called a self-undercoating product. Self-undercoating. You don't need to put an undercoat. But what you used to do, you didn't used to brush it. You didn't really used to use a roller. The old boys, going back years and years, when they were probably painting hospitals, big areas, even wardrobe doors and things like that, that's how I've used it before on wardrobe doors. Used to use a stippler. So you used to paint by hand with a brush, a door, and then to get rid of the brush marks, you used to stipple it out. Now when you stipple out, you don't go you used to slightly rotate it. And every so often, once you thought it was a little bit building up with too much paint, you just get a damp, well, say damp, it had a cloth with some white spirit on it, and you just clean it down. So that's a stippler. Now you stipple, even now for decorative treatments, you can still use a stippler to blend colours, and that's probably the word I wanted to use a few seconds ago, to blend colours, a stippler. And I think, anybody correct me, I think that's probably a horsehair bristle. How much are these? Could be 50-60 pounds, I think now. Right, move on from that. I've got ordinary brushes, I've got tack rags, I've got these are for stencils. Now I've probably got some smaller ones in here. I'll bring that out, bring it down here. I've got some more small stencil brushes. You know what stencils are? You do cut a pattern out on some parchment paper or something like that. You used to put some shellac knotting over it to make it a bit more waterproof. You can get paper that is waxed or waxy paper now to do stenciling, or even the OHP projection, you know, that, what do you call it, like a vinyl paper, something, Perspex. Now these stencil brushes, now you're going to say, oh, they sprig out, you're stenciling like that. What you used to do, you used to wrap some masking tape round so you could make it really tight, and then the bristles wouldn't slide under the edge of the stencil. So these are stencil brushes, and I've got them in here. Right, what else have we got that you'll find interesting? Now I used to call this a tick roller. You see that, a tick roller. Now you probably tell me you call it a speck roller, something like that. This is used in graining. Now, when I say used in graining, let's move that out of the way. I've not used it for a bit. Used to, you know, in hardwoods, you've got little specks in the grain. Now, that moves, goes over the surface. Used to just load that with a bit of paint. Used to, whether it be in a tray, roll it on, and then roll it onto the surface. And that used to get the little specks onto a grained panel that you were making or doing. You can get them that has a little bracket with a brush. I use this dragging brush, right? There'd be a brush just over the top like that. Be a bit smaller than this, and it'd fit that speck roller, tick roller, whatever you want to call it, and it used to be on a bracket. That used to be loaded with scumball glazes, and as you rolled it over the surface, obviously backwards so you weren't bending your bristles, that would be putting stain onto your surface for your graining. So that's another, that could be 60, 70, 80 years old that I've got there. Right, let's move on to these. Well, what's these? Dragging brushes, used for graining. Used to put a scumble on, drag it down, keep it flat to the surface. If this was a surface board, used to press it on. Now don't be frightened of it, press it on all the way and then drag it down. You can use these for doing just drag effects. Don't have to use these for actual graining, making things look like wood. You can see how worn that is. Can you see how worn that is? But you can just do drag effects. Now dragging effects were popular in, hold on, I've dropped something. Dragging effects were popular in the 90s for me coming through, and used to get these different brushes, different coarse, well these would be horsehair, very coarse, and used to get different effects with that. Now a good drag had a bit of a wave in it. You've probably seen old bedroom furniture that was rag rolled in the centre, you know, rag rolling cloth, well as it says, rag rolling. And these were used to put a bit of a brush mark, let's call it a brush mark, a drag effect. Now if you went down the surface and put a little bit of a wobble in it, that made it really look quite nice, that it didn't look regimented straight up and down. So these are dragging brushes used for graining, dragging. Right, let's move away from that. Same principle with all these sorts of brushes used in graining. Some really, can you see these? These are worn out, these are very old. Again, graining brushes. Move those away. Know what this is? Lining brush. You'd have well, you could use your artist's mole stick and do nice straight lines with these. These are the forerunners, weren't they, to us using the sash cut brushes now to get straight lines. So you can see that. So for lining, various sizes of these. My next one's in my box. I've got the feathers. Now watch back on the video about marbling the bath. I use feathers for marbling. You can also use feathers for doing graining, trying to do the heart grain, you know, when you've got mahogany, trying to get an effect with mahogany, you can use these up the middle and down, up and down, up and down. If you look at a piece of mahogany, cut it down the middle and see how the grain of the wood is, you'll see that you can replicate that with feathers. And again, as I've said before, it doesn't matter what you use, as long as you get the effect that you're wanting and the desired effect with whatever you use. It doesn't matter. Does that make sense? You know, don't matter what you use, as long as you get the effect, use it. So I've got feathers. I've got more brushes for graining. Again, use them however you want if you get the effect. Look at this. That's in there. Bit bigger sign writing brushes. These are probably sable, very soft. I've used that for marbling this last few weeks. I've got some pencils. I've got in here, you'll like this, bit of a muchness in here really. Those that know about paper hanging, because you know I like my paper hanging. If you've got old style papers or even new style papers that have got a salvage edge that wants trimming off, don't use a blade, don't use some shears, definitely don't call them scissors in front of me, don't use some shears. You need to get one of these, and I think you can still get them. There's little pieces to put it on for a guide, but that would trim two sharp blades there, and you'd adjust the size for where the salvage needs to be cut off. They're two cutting wheels. Oh, you're not going to see it. Come on, focus on me, focus. Two cutting wheels. These are a bit worn, they want cleaning up. That trim the salvage off of wallpapers, normally quite expensive wallpapers. So we've got one of those. I've actually got two of those. So let's get that away. Right, what else have we got? I've got a bigger version of that, spec roller. See that? Look quite dangerous, don't they? This you'll probably like in here. Look at this, flogger. When you say flogger, look at that. Now again, when you're doing your graining, or it doesn't matter, it's a decorative finish, you might be just doing some scumble glazing. If this was your door, you'd be, get that? I'm going to come back in a second. Back had to go away. So we've got a flogger. Now if you were graining and you want to get an effect of broken grain, you could tap it on the surface and it gives you an effect. You can also use it as a bit of a dragger, top to bottom, like that. But again, use this to get the effects that you're requiring. So if it's a case of flogging it, dabbing the surface top to bottom to break that surface, decorative paint effects, broken colour work, this is what you'd be using, something like this. Right, got more feathers in there, rollers. Right, let's move on to these. We're nearly done. As well as using your draggers, as well as using these to get a wood effect. I've got various different sizes of metal comb. These also used for graining. Now you can see some of them are broken away. That's because over the years, to get a different pattern or effect, you could break these away to give you different effects of dragging over a surface. Got multiple of these, lots and lots. Here they are. Here's a prime example of one that's been broken down to get a certain grain of wood. You see that? Yeah. But again, I've got numerous ones. Again, I can't say how old some of these things are. Very, very old. Put them away. I've even got some stencils, letter stencils, so I can do lettering on the side of your steps or anything like that using your stencil brush. Again, make it tight, wrap some masking tape around it gently. You don't have to apply too much paint when you come to stenciling. Softer the better. Put too much on, it creeps under the edges of the stencils, but do it softly, you can blend it and get some really nice effects with that. So I've got that there, in there. Got some chalks. Oh, here. Oh, it's like a Pandora's box. Look at that one. That is a good condition. Paper hangers, trimmer. You see that? That's lovely, that is. Goes in that box. I think the brand that everybody might know, or you didn't know, Ridgely. Is it Ridgely? Please comment. It's Ridgely that are the main people that had those sorts of things. They make them. Again, really fine brushes, these. Well, similar sort of principle to using the comb, but with brush effect. Again, use these in graining, can use them in marbling. Now, one thing I've not got in this box, because it's out in my box of tricks up there that's got all my paint, a real natural sponge. Now you're going to say, why do you have a real natural sponge? There's something about a real natural sponge, proper sea sponge, that, as you've seen on the video where I've done marbling, you can get nice broken effects with a natural I'll say it properly, natural sea sponge that you can't get from a synthetic sponge. So that would normally be in here, but because I've been using it and I've washed it out, I'm letting it dry out because it is a natural product. So that's that. Let me move on to the final tier. Get these away so we've got a bit more room. And again, look, old style brushes. I've used this brush a couple of times. It's been in vulcanised rubber. It's a 4-inch for colour washing. Now you're going to say, colour washing, what's that? Well, it looks like a scruffy painted surface being washed down, but I've used anything, and that's a well worn down brush that gave me a nice effect on colour washing. Put that away. Nothing else in there. The last tier. Even got a tack rag. So get the last tier out. These are the ones. Is anybody going to tell me what this is called? This is a proper big mop. I call it a big mop. I've never even used one of these, so I mean, it shows you how old this probably is. Oh, smell. Can you smell that? Oh, can you smell it? Lovely. But back in the day, I'm going to say old boys, and it's the term, the old lad, the old boys would use stuff like this. Probably you wouldn't use it today, but for every tool there's something, there's a reason why you used it. So look at this proper mop brush. I've got another lovely big flogger. That's what that 3 is, about just over about a 2-inch flogger. That is lovely. I do like using this one when I'm doing a bit of graining. My father does more graining than I do when we need it, but I mean, obviously I can do graining. And again, over the side of the surface, breaks it up nicely, and then you can always come and soften out with a badger softener. Guess what bristle that is? It's called a badger softener. Badger softeners, that's probably about a 2.5, 3 inch-ish, whatever size. These might be about, you can still get them today, 30, 40, 50 quid for a badger softener. I think what they do, they harvest the bristle off badgers, because they probably have them in a farm just for harvesting and cultivating badger bristles. Probably not. They probably spot one at the side of the road that's been run over and go, we'll have that and we'll make some badger brushes. That's why they're so expensive. Every few and far between badgers. So, badger softener. This used in graining, you can use it in marbling, any decorative effect if you need to soften out, and you saw on the video. Please watch the video if you've not seen it, how to use this. Get your paints and your scumbles and your glazes and tips of the bristles just to soften off anything, so it doesn't look like it's been applied by a paintbrush or anything like that. Got that. Got a few more of the similar sort of thing. That's not quite a badger softener. It's more, what would you call that one? It's a bit coarser. It's more of a horsehair. That would be probably used again in graining. I've not used it before. It's probably before my time when that was last used. Could easily be 60s, 50s, 40s, might be even a bit older than that for being used, but I've not used that. But if I could use that on something to give me an effect that I want, as I said earlier, use whatever you can to get the effects and the desired effects that you're requiring. So that's that. Another one of those. And then I think we're about done. I've got here, that's normally in the box, this is a little hand stippler that gets into corners of rooms. I use this even now quite often. If you're stippling a wall out, or you just want to soften something and you can't get the bigger stippler into an angle, that can get, it's about 1 inch, can go into corners. These, back in the day, the J.R. Ratcliffe's, anybody who knows what J.R. Ratcliffe's were, they were the supplier of your oil-based scumballs and specialist brushes like this. And I think I've about done. I've got some wax that you can use. Wax, got some smaller little brushes, pinstripes. I remember a good number of years ago I did some panels on a counter in a, it was actually a dog, I'd call it a dog hotel, expensive hotel for dogs, and the front counter needed to be done into sections of marble. So what I used, some pinstripe, you know, Halfords anywhere, pinstripe, and I used that very fine to do the joint crack between 4 pieces of marble. And because I was using water-based scumballs and glazes, what I did, I got that on, and so I didn't get any sissing when I put water-based varnish over the top. I just rubbed that over with some talcum powder. Talcum powder is your finest abrasive that you can get, and it also takes off the surface tension when you get sissing, when something's a bit shiny or a bit I would say a glossy surface, particularly like a PVC plastic. Rub over it with some talcum powder and that loses that surface tension that you can varnish over it with the water-based paint, and it didn't siss and it came up lovely. It's a shame I can't find any photos for anything like that, and I could show you what it's like. But all in all, I think now I've gone through that box to tell you what I've got in here and what I haven't. If there's something that you're spotting that you want a little bit more information on, please, you know what, I'll get these in a minute. If you want a bit more information on what all these bits and pieces are and how they're used, you can probably Google them and see them in action. Probably not. I mean, I've looked on YouTube and not everybody's doing marbling and graining. There's not many doing it, but I've got the tools. I can do it as and when, and hopefully they say everything's in about a 30, 35, 40 year coming back round cycle. I was doing this because it was fashionable. It was late 80s to early 90s, then it all dropped off. So marbling, graining, rag rolling, because rag rolling, just get cloth. You can either use a sheepskin chamois leather for rag rolling, ragging off. I would be taking off the glaze or the paint from a surface to give you a ragged effect, or you can rag on, which is rag rolling, putting the paints onto the rag and rolling it over the surface. All those were really popular in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I think it was Princess Di, don't quote me, I think it was Princess Di that was bringing it all back into fashion in the mid 80s, and then obviously the peasants like us, we were all picking up on it because it was all in those fancy magazines, mid-90s. But no, I've got the tools. If it all comes back round again, Phil Becker's the man. He's got all the stuff, and he's even got some notes that if he's forgotten how to do it, he can have a read up. But no, that's it. Hope that interests people. It's probably half an hour's worth of waffling on about a toolbox for a master painter, but I've got it, and it's what you are: painters, decorators, and then there is that next level of decorator that does this sort of stuff. And again, I'll say it, and I always say it again, you get what you pay for. So if somebody's doing this, it doesn't come cheap because there's skills involved. There's probably a good number of years of college involved. I mean, as I said, I was at college for 4 years doing City and Guilds, but in that 4 years I was also doing an evening class for 4 years learning this. And ironically, well, it's not ironically, when I came out of college and I went on to do teacher training, because I did teacher training to teach painting and decorating, one of the courses that I also helped out lecture on was the decorative finish course at Basildore College in Nottingham. Anybody that might be watching back probably remembers me from the mid-90s that I was there with Mike Myatt, and we were teaching that class because it was such a popular class in the early to mid-90s. Good times, good times. Don't dwell on the past. Let's move on to the things that's in front of us, because it's no good looking back in the past and being nostalgic about things. The future's where we need to be. So hopefully I'm telling you, as a painter and decorator, there's plenty of future in painting and decorating. You've just got to up your game, move yourself away from those that are the unskilled, untrained, uneducated. I don't want to be rude, but move yourself away from it. Get some more skills under your belt and charge you a little bit more money. Hence doing this sort of stuff. I'm not saying it's easy money, but you can make your money. On that note, comments, press the bell, please subscribe, share, usual. Over and out, see you on the next one.